I went into playing this game thinking that it was going to be just another precision platformer. Having played a decent number of those over the years, I feel confident in being able to see when games of this kind are heading towards that direction. Don't get me wrong, a decent portion of what this demo has to offer is like that, but I was pleasantly surprised to see that there's more to it beneath the surface. You could say that demos from the 90s/2000s have left me thinking that any and all will be at least an hour or two long. Nowadays, it seems like that's not the case. I started playing through the demo for Cyra, and before I knew it, I was back at the main menu because I'd played through the main portion of the demo. It was only when I saw that I could play harder levels that I started to feel that there was more to Cyra besides what I initially saw. Had I only played through the first section of the game, I would have left thinking that it was more like a proof of concept instead of a more typical demo. I'm sure that the overall reason as to why the demo split into two sections is because the first is meant to allow general players to get their feet wet, but the second part is for those that want more of a challenge. Having experienced both sections of Cyra, the best thing that the devs could do would be to try to do away with the disconnect that's currently present between both sections. It might be that's not possible, or goes against the idea that the devs have for this game, but I don't think it's a good thing when the full extent of what your demo has to offer is behind a higher difficulty mode. I think it's possible to make the first area that's more like a tutorial tie into the much harder second section, but I can also see how that would quickly overwhelm general players. It's because there's a pretty steep difficulty spike when you go from the first section of the game to the second. The first section came off like the kind of experience that you play through when you really only want to see what a game's story has to offer. The second section was more about offering challenging gameplay and showcasing the true depth of Cyra. Chances are that it's better to make it so that players can choose how much of the demo to play, but what came to mind as I was playing was that if some only played through the first section, they might get a wrong impression of what Cyra will eventually have to offer, and they'll be turned away from wanting to give it a try once it's released. Despite how challenging the second section of this demo was, I felt satisfied due to eventually being able to advance. It took me much longer than I'd like to admit, and it got me close to rage quitting, but it was the kind of challenge that pushes me towards wanting to overcome it rather than have me thinking that it's way outside my comfort zone and something I'm not willing to invest time into. It also helps that I've played numerous precision platformers. They all differ from one another when it comes to specifics such as abilities that are available or the kind of obstacles you need to overcome. While that may be true, these games are kind of like riding a bicycle. It may take a bit of a while to get a hang of them due to the specific mechanics that they each have to offer, but you'll eventually realize that there are more similarities than differences. I don't want to say that it's thanks to my familiarity with this subgenre of games that I was able to quickly become familiarized with it, because then that would be doing a disservice to the work that clearly went into making movement and the overall mechanics intuitive. It's not that I was just able to get the hang of Cyra's controls within a short amount of time. I could clearly see how precise some of the moves could be. In particular, I liked how well controlled the jump was. It was pretty sensitive, and as a result of that, I could be very precise when it came to overcoming obstacles. This was especially helpful because the optional challenges in the first section of the demo and the second made it necessary to really have a grasp of Cyra's controls and how to mix and match them depending on the obstacle that lay ahead of you. In particular, I thought it was really cool how there was usually enough room for slight changes to be able to overcome obstacles in more ways than one. Two that immediately come to mind are the arcing dash jump or dashing a short time after jumping on a trampoline. I like this because it made it so that there was an open-ended nature to Cyra, even if small when compared to other similar games. Thanks to this, I didn't feel forced to overcome obstacles in an ultra-specific way. This made it so that I could approach challenges how I most felt comfortable, and that they weren't as big of a challenge had it been so that there was really only one solution in order to advance. In continuing to discuss this, it's worth going back to how I described jumping in this game as well controlled. It's great that you can exercise control over how loose or tight the jumping is, but I found that to more or less be thrown out the window during the second section of Cyra. What I mean is that I felt that the trampolines that were frequently used in this section of the game negated you being able to control your jump. This was especially noticeable during harder areas when precise movement and timing was required in order to advance. I realized that this probably doesn't sound like a big deal to some, and it's worth asking how bad can something be if it's possible to fully utilize it in the state it's in. Though that may be true, I would have liked had the trampolines been an extension of how the basic jump works. Due to not having as much control as I would have liked when using trampolines, I was forced to repeat sections over and over again until I got the hang of the necessary movements and timings. The point I'm trying to make is that though it's possible to overcome this, the result is an experience that's harder than is necessary. Speaking of that, I'm not sure what to think about Cyra's overall difficulty. It's clear that this is meant to be a big part of the game, seeing as how it's a precision platformer, but like I just said, at times it felt harder than it needed to be. I encountered this in more ways than one, but it was especially bad when I decided to stop playing during the final hard level. I assumed that since I was able to continue from that point after failing to advance, that I would be able to do the same after I quit and came back. Unfortunately, I was wrong. I went back to playing Cyra a few hours later and I saw that I needed to start from the very first of the 7 hard levels. At one point I was determined to beat these levels because I saw that I was skilled enough, but I also didn't want to have to repeat sections of a game that I'd already overcome just a few hours beforehand. I'm the kind of player that likes to overcome challenges and showcase my skills, but sometimes it's not worth the effort. By then, I felt secure with my overall skills in Cyra and that I'd seen more than enough of what the demo had to offer. I feel conflicted over Cyra and the Beacon Path, because despite having clearly enjoyed what I got to play of it, I don't think it does enough to stand out from the crowd that it's a part of. To me, it's the kind of game that's meant for players that can't get enough of precision platformer games. If you want more than that, chances are that you won't enjoy Cyra as much as you'd like, and you might feel inclined to replay precision platformer classics that paved the way for games such as this one. It might be harsh to say that a game doesn't stand out, but at the same time, precision platformer fans will at the very least get some enjoyment from it. It's possible that the full version will offer much more than it currently does at this point, but seeing as how this is just a demo, it's not entirely fair to compare it to games that have already been fully released and came long before it. If you enjoyed this content, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share. Thank you very much for watching.